Picture this scenario, because I feel like it is probably going to sound uncomfortably familiar.
Oh boy. Lay it on me.
Okay, so it is 9:00 a.m. You have just sat down at your desk, you've got your coffee in hand, and you are staring at this massive, just monumental to-do list.
Right. The dreaded morning list.
Exactly. And right at the very top is that one giant project, like the one that actually moves the needle for your career, the one you have been dreading for weeks.
We all have one of those hovering over us.
We really do. But instead of opening that document and getting to work, you pause, you think, you know what? I should probably just clear out my email inbox first.
Oh, of course. The classic pivot.
Right. It's like, let me just get to inbox 0, fire off a few quick replies, get some quick wins on the board, and then I will be perfectly primed for the big stuff.
Which is never what actually happens.
Never. So you spend like an hour replying to random threads, sorting your folders, maybe even reorganizing your desktop icons. And you feel incredibly busy. You feel productive.
Yeah.
But deep down, you know exactly what is happening. You are running away.
It is the ultimate modern knowledge worker trap, honestly.
Yeah.
We completely substitute motion for meaningful action.
Yes. Motion versus action.
Exactly. We exhaust ourselves on these trivial, low-stakes tasks so that we have a built-in, culturally acceptable excuse for why we didn't tackle the essential work. I was too busy. Look at all these emails I answered.
Which is the exact cycle we are breaking today. Welcome to this deep dive.
Glad to be here for this one. It's a big topic.
It is. And our mission today is to give you a shortcut to being well-informed, stripping away all that information overload, and tackling the absolute beast that is time management and procrastination.
A beast we all wrestle with, daily.
Totally. And to do that, we are looking at a detailed review of one of the most popular, highly rated productivity audiobooks ever written, which is Eat That Frog by Brian Tracy.
It's considered a classic in the productivity space for a reason. I mean, this isn't like theoretical neuroscience here. It is a highly actionable playbook.
Right. It's very boots on the ground.
Very much so.
Yeah.
It feels much less like an academic lecture and much more like a direct, slightly relentless coaching session from a mentor who, frankly, just refuses to let you off the hook.
Okay, let's unpack this. We are going to break down this practical system so you can stop putting things off, get significantly more done in less time, and, customize these principles for your own daily grind.
Because the reality is every single one of us has that giant project waiting for us today.
We do. But before we get into the tactical productivity hacks, we really have to define the core problem we are trying to solve. And to do that, we have to address the rather bizarre, visceral metaphor at the center of this entire philosophy.
Right, the frog.
The frog.
Yeah, so the title of the book is actually drawn from a famous quote, which is widely attributed to Mark Twain. And the premise is basically this. If the first thing you do each morning is eat a live frog, you'll have the satisfaction of knowing it's probably the worst thing you'll do all day.
It just paints such a horrifying picture. I mean, chewing on a live frog first thing in the morning.
It does. But it perfectly encapsulates the feeling of facing a daunting task, right? It is intentionally visceral.
Yeah, it really makes you feel that dread.
Exactly. In the realm of Brian Tracy's productivity system, your quote-unquote frog is defined as your most important, most difficult, and most impactful task.
The big one.
The big one. It is the exact item on your to-do list that you are most likely to procrastinate on. It's that task sitting there staring at you, just daring you to take a bite.
But the default human behavior, what you and I and almost everyone listening actually does, is we avoid the frog at all costs.
Oh, absolutely.
We spend our day checking emails, attending status meetings that definitely could have been a quick message.
Oh, don't even get me started on those meetings.
Right. Or, scrolling through industry news and just knocking out all those easy, low-stakes tasks. It's like, if your workday is a buffet, we are intentionally filling our entire plate with dinner rolls.
I love that analogy. Dinner roll.
Yeah, we gorge on the bread, right? The Slack messages, the trivial administrative stuff, so that by the time we get to the end of the line, we literally have no room or no energy left for the state.
The actual impactful work remains completely untouched.
Completely.
And what's fascinating here is the underlying psychology behind why we reach for the bread. When we look at the source material's breakdown of why we procrastinate, it completely upends the usual narrative of self-shame.
Because we usually just feel terrible about it, right?
Exactly. We tend to think we avoid the big tasks because we are just inherently lazy or, we lack discipline. But procrastination is very rarely a symptom of laziness.
See, that is a tough one to believe when I am actively choosing to watch like a 2-hour documentary on YouTube instead of writing a quarterly strategy report. It definitely feels like laziness in the moment.
It masquerades as laziness for sure, but structurally, it is a coping mechanism.
A coping mechanism.
Yeah. The source material explains that procrastination is actually rooted in fear of failure, a severe lack of clarity, a sense of overwhelming complexity, and perfectionism.
Oh, perfectionism. That's a huge one.
It is. Your brain looks at the frog and perceives an actual threat. You avoid the big task because you're afraid you won't do it perfectly, or because the task is so large that you honestly just don't know the exact first step to take.
So we retreat to the inbox.
Exactly, because the inbox provides a closed, predictable loop. Replying to an email has clear parameters. You get a little hit of dopamine every time you hit send, and most importantly, you cannot fail at typing. Sounds good, thanks.
Wow. Okay, so we are essentially paralyzed by the ambiguity of the big task, and we medicate that anxiety with the certainty of small, meaningless tasks.
Precisely. Your brain is optimizing for immediate psychological safety over long-term professional impact.
That makes so much sense.
Right. Tracy's solution to this psychological paralysis is immediate action, even if that action is entirely imperfect.
Just do something.
Just do something. Break the seal on the task. But, and this is key, he argues you cannot just force yourself to start through sheer willpower. You have to engineer your environment first to remove that ambiguity.
Which means if we accept that staring at a massive, undefined project triggers our fear of failure, our first defensive move has to be environmental. Like, we can't even look at the frog until we've manipulated our workspace and our goals to eliminate the confusion.
Spot on. The book outlines several practical strategies for this, but two foundational concepts really stand out for overcoming this initial overwhelm.
Okay, what are they?
First is the idea of setting the table, which means defining the exact measurable outcome you want.
Setting the table. Got it.
Yeah, you cannot just write work on marketing plan on your to-do list. That is a guaranteed trigger for procrastination. You have to ask yourself, what is the single physical outcome I need to achieve? Clear goals create clear action.
Okay, and the second one?
Second, you have to prepare thoroughly before you begin. This means gathering all your documents, opening the necessary software, and literally clearing away the physical clutter from your workspace.
Right.
The underlying mechanism here is cognitive load. The easier a task feels to start, the less friction your brain experiences, and the more likely you are to actually engage.
Okay, I have to play devil's advocate here, though.
For it.
Because spending an hour organizing your tools and clearing your workspace sounds suspiciously like another incredibly sneaky form of procrastination.
Oh, it absolutely can be.
Right, because I can easily convince myself that I cannot possibly start building a complex financial model until I have, like, color-coded my highlighters, wiped down my monitors, and organized my browser bookmarks. That feels like a massive trap.
It is a trap, provided you are doing it in the very moment you are supposed to be working.
Okay.
If you wait until 9:00 a.m. to organize your desk, you are absolutely just procrastinating. And that is exactly why the framework introduces a crucial circuit breaker. You must plan every day in advance, specifically the night before.
Oh. So you're physically separating the planning phase from the execution phase.
Exactly. When you plan the night before, you completely bypass your morning brain's ability to negotiate or talk you out of the hard work.
Because your morning brain is very persuasive.
Very persuasive. You are actively combating decision fatigue. Every single minute you spend planning the evening prior saves you multiple minutes during execution, because you aren't waking up and burning cognitive fuel trying to decide what to do.
You just wake up and do it.
Right. You give your subconscious mind the entire night to process the plan, and you wake up with the decisions already locked in.
You know, that mirrors the concept of mise en place in a professional kitchen beautifully.
Oh, that's a great comparison.
Yeah, like when you watch chefs in a high-end restaurant and that massive dinner rush hits at 7 p.m., they are never stopping to chop onions, measure out spices, or, dig around looking for the right frying pan.
But they'd be crushed if they did that.
Exactly. All the ingredients are pre-measured, chopped, and sitting in little bowls right in front of their station. The workspace is entirely prepped before the first customer even walks in.
It's all ready to go.
So when the chaotic orders start flying, the actual cooking becomes an automatic reflex. They don't have to think, they just execute.
That is the exact mechanism Tracy is trying to instill for knowledge workers. You are creating a cognitive mise en place for your professional life.
I love that. Cognitive mise en place.
Yeah. By setting everything up the night before, You strip away the friction of starting. You eliminate the ambiguity that your brain usually uses as an excuse to flee back to the inbox.
Okay, let's say a listener has adopted this. They are prepping the night before, they've got their mise en place, but they still have a monstrous list of tasks. Because, I mean, that is just the reality of modern work.
It is. The list never truly ends.
Right. You cannot physically do all of them. So the friction point isn't just starting, it's looking at a list of 50 items and trying to mathematically figure out which ones are the actual frogs and which ones are just tadpoles.
Tadpoles, yeah. Well, this is where we transition into the ruthless math of productivity. The framework leans heavily on the 80-20 rule, the Pareto principle, the concept that 20% of your activities create 80% of your results.
Sure, but let's be honest. Anyone listening to a deep dive on productivity is already deeply familiar with the 80-20 rule. It is kind of a cliche at this point.
It definitely is.
The issue isn't knowing the math. The issue is that it feels impossible to actually identify which specific tasks belong in that golden 20% when, everything feels urgent.
It does feel impossible, especially when you have a manager or clients breathing down your neck demanding updates.
Exactly.
But the book's method for filtering that massive list requires you to shift your perspective entirely away from urgency and strictly toward consequences.
Consequences.
Yeah, you have to ask yourself a very sobering question. If I do not complete this task, what is the actual long-term consequence to my future or my career?
Oh, wow. That's a heavy question.
It is. The tasks with the highest potential consequences are your frogs. Every job contains a few critical activities, what the book calls key result areas, that produce the vast majority of the value you are actually paid for.
So we have to strip away the illusion of dizziness.
Right. The review we are analyzing highlights a quality manager as an example. Their key result areas are not answering emails promptly, attending weekly status updates, or filling out expense reports.
Even though that takes up most of their day.
Exactly. Their 20% is proactive problem solving, conducting rigorous audits, and designing long-term process improvements. If they fail to answer an email, someone might get annoyed. If they fail to conduct an audit, the product fails.
It's a huge difference. And the source also applies this to a modern content creator. Like, if you are building an audience online, your key areas are script creation, thumbnail design, and actually hitting publish on the content.
Yes.
Everything else, tweeting, checking your analytics every 5 minutes, agonizing over the color palette of your website, that is the 80% that yields almost zero tangible results. It feels like work, but it really isn't.
It's just motion. And Tracy takes this mathematical filtering even further. He distills the 80-20 rule down to what he calls the law of three.
The law of three.
Yes. He argues that if you truly analyze your contributions, just 3 core activities produce the vast majority of your value. Just 3.
Only 3.
Only 3. Your mandate is to find those 3 tasks, prioritize them above all else, and essentially ignore the rest.
Okay, here's where it gets really interesting. Because ignore the rest. I can almost hear the collective gasp of high achievers listening to this right now.
I know, it's a terrifying thought.
If you are used to getting an A+ in every single category, the idea of intentionally letting certain plates drop is terrifying. It's almost like a triage situation in an emergency room.
What's a perfect analogy?
Yeah, you aren't just deciding who gets surgery first. You are actively deciding who has to sit in the waiting room with a broken arm for 6 hours because you only have the resources to treat the critical heart attacks. It is a really ruthless allocation of scarce resources.
Triage is exactly the way to look at it because time is your most scarce resource. If you treat every task like a critical emergency, the actual critical projects die on the operating table.
Which raises the inevitable tension of the book, doesn't it? What exactly do you do with that massive crowd of non-critical tasks? They don't just magically disappear from your job description.
No, they certainly don't.
And my boss is still going to want those non-critical things done eventually.
Of course.
Which leads to one of the most counterintuitive strategies in the entire framework.
I'm intrigued.
To be truly productive, you have to learn the skill of actively not doing things. Tracy introduces the concept of creative procrastination.
Creative procrastination? That sounds like an oxymoron.
It does. But he argues that, inevitably, everyone procrastinates. It is a mathematical certainty because there simply is not enough time in the day to do everything. So, since you are going to procrastinate regardless, the goal is to stop doing it accidentally and start doing it intentionally.
Oh, so instead of accidentally procrastinating on the massive quarterly report because my brain is scared of the ambiguity, I am purposefully, strategically procrastinating on organizing my inbox because I have identified that it simply does not matter.
Yes, you are taking control of the delay.
I'm choosing the victim.
Exactly. You are actively budgeting your procrastination. You purposefully postpone the low-value tasks and distractions. And once you have successfully delayed the trivial stuff and you finally sit down with that critical VIP task, the frog, you have to deploy the final, arguably most difficult mechanism.
Let me guess. Single handling,
Single-handedly.
which means
Yeah.
absolutely zero multitasking.
The zero. The philosophy is completely unyielding on this point. Once you begin the frog, you must continue working on it without diversion until it is 100% complete. No checking your phone, no glancing at a new email notification, no switching over to Slack just to see what the team is chatting about.
But why is the book so militant about this? Because, I mean, jumping over to answer a quick Slack question only takes 10 seconds. It feels completely harmless.
It feels harmless, but neurologically, it is devastating to your productivity.
Devastating.
Yes, it comes down to a cognitive mechanism called attention residue.
Attention residue.
Right. When you jump from writing a complex report to reading a Slack message, your brain does not instantly and cleanly pivot back to the report when you are done. A percentage of your cognitive processing power remains stuck on that Slack message. Thinking about the tone, formulating a follow-up thought.
Oh, wow. I do that all the time.
We all do. That is attention residue. It means when you return to the frog, you are operating with diminished cognitive capacity. You are tangibly slower, and the work is harder. Every time you switch contexts, you incur a heavy cognitive tax.
So you're basically exhausting yourself without realizing it.
Exactly. Single handling is the only way to maintain the deep momentum required to actually finish the difficult work.
It sounds incredibly logical, but I mean, in the reality of the modern hyper-connected workplace, single handling almost feels like an act of rebellion. You are essentially telling your entire company, I am ignoring all of you until this specific thing is done.
It requires immense discipline and boundary setting. And, while the system sounds airtight in theory, it is crucial we look at the critiques of the source material to provide a fully balanced view.
We definitely should, because no productivity system is without its flaws, and this book was written before the era of remote work and relentless software notifications.
Exactly. The review we are analyzing gives the audiobook a very impressive 4.7 out of 5 stars overall, praising it as a highly motivating tool. But it acknowledges clear weaknesses.
Like what?
Well, for one, the advice can be quite repetitive. The author stretches the concepts into 21 distinct principles, but many of them overlap significantly in their actual application.
I can see that. I mean, defining your outcome, preparing your workspace, and planning the night before, they all circle the exact same drain of environmental preparation.
They do. Furthermore, the book lacks rigorous academic or scientific research. It relies almost entirely on Tracy's personal business anecdotes and practical experience rather than peer-reviewed psychological studies. And finally, a major critique is that modern knowledge workers might find its traditional philosophy overly simplistic. It doesn't tell you how to set up a complex Notion database, utilize automated tags, or manage a sprawling agile project board. It just tells you to sit down and do the hard thing.
Which, ironically, might be exactly why it is so successful.
Oh, how so?
Well, we get so caught up in building the perfect, frictionless software systems that building the system becomes its own form of procrastination. Like, we spend 3 days coding a database just to manage 5 tasks.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, that is the exact insight the review lands on. The review explains why the audiobook format specifically works so incredibly well despite these theoretical flaws.
It's the delivery.
Yes. The energetic, urgent narration bridges the most difficult gap in human behavior. The gap between simply knowing what you are supposed to do and actually feeling the internal fire to sit down and do it.
Right. A complex, peer-reviewed scientific paper won't give you that drive. A sophisticated app won't give you that drive.
Exactly. Sometimes you don't need a highly complex workflow diagram. You just need a coach, metaphorically grabbing you by the shoulders and telling you to stop hiding in your inbox.
The motivational format creates a visceral sense of immediate action that really transcends its simplistic roots.
It really does.
So pulling all of these threads together, what does this actually mean for you listening right now? The ultimate takeaway from Eat That Frog is a heavy dose of reality.
Very heavy.
True success, whether you are an executive, a student, an engineer, or a creator, does not depend on your raw intelligence. It certainly doesn't depend on having the most complicated productivity app installed on your phone.
No, it doesn't.
It depends on your willingness to tolerate the discomfort of ambiguity. It depends on discipline, intense focus, and the consistent daily action of tackling the absolute hardest thing first while letting the trivial fires burn.
Clarity strips away the fear that prevents action. And practice discipline will always, always outlast fleeting motivation.
Always. So, as you look toward your day tomorrow, think about that overwhelming inbox from our opening scenario. If you can take 5 minutes tonight to identify your biggest, ugliest frog, your #1 key result area, and set your table before you go to sleep.
Just 5 minutes.
Yeah. Tomorrow morning, before you even open your email, before you check a single message, if you sit down and tackle that specific task first, well, everything else in your day is going to feel like a downhill breeze.
Because the hardest part is over.
Exactly. You have already survived the absolute worst thing. The rest of the day is just eating bread.
It completely dictates the momentum and cognitive energy of your entire day. But before we wrap up, I want to leave you with one final, slightly more provocative thought to ponder on your own.
Ooh, all right, let's hear it.
Throughout this entire deep dive, we have talked exclusively about eating your professional frogs, your spreadsheets, your audits, your scripts. But what happens if you apply the law of 3 and the concept of triage to your personal life?
Wow, that shifts the landscape entirely.
It really does. Think about it tonight. What is the one difficult conversation you have been avoiding with a friend or a partner? What is the one medical appointment or health choice you keep putting off until next month because it's uncomfortable?
Or that passion project gathering dust in your closet because you were afraid you won't be good at it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
If you wake up tomorrow morning, what happens to your life if you decide to eat your personal frog first?
That is a massive question and exactly the kind of friction we need to grow. Definitely something to seriously chew on as you plan your day tonight. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive, and we will catch you next time.